McLaren finally give their support to Lando Norris, asking Oscar Piastri to do what he can to help his teammate out ahead of the Baku Grand Prix. Is it the right thing to do? What does it say about Lando? What does it say about Oscar? Where is the Drivers' Championship going to go from here? That is what we're going to find out. So we're going to take a little break from talking about Adrian Newey because apparently I've talked about him too much and I'm clearly obsessed, but that doesn't matter. We've got other stuff to talk about. So ahead of the Azerbaijan Grand Prix, Andrea Stella has come out and said, officially, we are going to bias towards Lando Norris. What a fun way to put that. Biasing towards Lando Norris, because it doesn't really say that's it, we're putting our weight right behind Lando. No, no, no. It just says, well, in certain give or take situations, we'll probably give it to Lando. And apparently, Oscar has agreed to this, including giving up a win if necessary. Although it sounds like even that is only if needs must. And the final part of this is that the team are going to review this on a race by race basis. So if suddenly they decide to have a change of heart after Baku, well, then we're going to have another announcement that says, actually, we're back to what we were doing before. All of this couched as doing what's best for the team. So what does it all mean? I mean, look, pragmatically, yeah, it's probably the right thing to do. Lando's what, 62 points now behind Max Verstappen with 232 points still available. So yeah, probably the right thing to do to give Lando your backing and give him the best chance of winning a championship. But it's so much more nuanced than that. There's so much more about it. And you know, the first thing to say is, what does it say about Lando's standing within the team that it's taken him so long to get to this point to say, yeah, all right, fine, we'll do it. It's so begrudging as well. It's so, yeah, okay, we'll give it to Lando because he's our best shot at winning a drivers. Now, they're ultimately they're going to win the constructors championship this season, barring any major uplift in form from Red Bull, which doesn't seem to be forthcoming, or a massive drop off in performance from McLaren, which also doesn't seem to be on the horizon. And with only 7 points between them in the constructors, you'd imagine that the constructors is probably sewn up. Where they're going to struggle now is whether or not they tease the drivers' championship out of Max Verstappen's cold, angry hands. But why has it taken them so long to cotton on to the fact that Lando is their guy? My argument to this has always been, look, he just hasn't stamped his authority on the team. If you look back at drivers like Michael Schumacher, you look back at Lewis when he was in his pomp at Mercedes, even in the seasons when he was up against Nico Rosberg. Nico will argue that he had team orders used against him, but actually there was no question because Lewis was just a quicker driver. He was just a more complete driver at that time, just in the same way that Michael Schumacher was undoubtedly the the better driver than Eddie Irvine or Rubens Barrichello during his time at Ferrari. So there was no question about the team backing them. But has Lando really done that? I don't know. I don't think he has. Every time I think about this, I just think, those starts and the you know the fact that he so easily got overtaken um in Monza. It was his own fault he got overtaken. He just gave his teammate too much space. And on the flip side, it's not as if he's been up against an underperforming driver. They're in the position they're in the constructors at the moment because Oscar's been incredible where he's needed to really up his game. He really has. Either side of the summer break, he's been probably the standout McLaren driver. Whereas although Lando keeps sticking it on pole, he keeps underperforming. Even after he got overtaken in Monza, he was just driving angry, sure. But if you're a championship contender, surely you need to keep your head. And it was to the detriment of his performance. And it's not as if Lando absolutely finds himself in that position because he has unquestionably been the better driver this season. I just don't think he has. And one point that young Mr. Buxton made um, in that podcast was that he has spoken to team members within McLaren, and there seems to be a feeling amongst at least a certain portion of them that Oscar Piastri's ceiling, his potential ceiling, is higher than Lando Norris's. So that's something that I've said on this channel, in other channels. I've heard other people that I respect say that as well. But now to have some confirmation that McLaren themselves think that as well, that you can start to understand why there's so much reticence to put their backing behind Lando solely. This would be different if there was a clear gulf in performance between Lando and Oscar, and Lando had absolutely stamped his authority on this team and his teammate, we wouldn't be having this argument. It wouldn't even be a question. But it's been done now. And I do think pragmatically it's the right thing for McLaren to do. Whether or not it actually is the best thing in terms of the champion that we get at the end of the season, well, look, that's a different story and one that I'll cover in a second. But okay, does Oscar actually have the higher potential? Last season he was clearly second best, but he had peaks. And for me, that's what a driver needs to show, right? It's not about their average performance or how many mistakes they make in their rookie season. That it's not about that, because mistakes can be ironed out, but a base performance that is low cannot be ironed out. It's the peaks that you want to see because that's the potential. That's what that driver can hit. And Oscar's peaks last season were super high. Just look at his performance in Japan, for example, in qualifying. You know, these are not the performances of a guy that's literally just walked into a Formula One car, especially one where testing is so limited and coming from a driver academy at another team, which he did because he was at Alpine prior to turning up at McLaren. But that was a prelude to what we're seeing now, because now the big weakness that he had last season, the tyre management, he seems to have got on top of it by and large. His qualifying performances are still not quite up to the same standard that Lando Norris is achieving, but Lando is super fast. And you'd expect that over a bit of time, that's something that Oscar will get as well. It's something that it took him time to understand in F2. But he's got there. He's got pretty close already in 18 months. And in the last 4 to 5 races, he's probably been the better McLaren driver. And it's something that, as I say, the team themselves are starting to understand as well. And Oscar will feel that he also just hasn't had the rub of the green. I've said this more than once on this channel that twice he got penalties that were so marginal. The impeding one in Imola probably cost him pole. And then that tiny little track limits error in Austria, which you could argue probably wasn't even a track limits error, put him behind his teammate on the grid, costing him a shot at those race wins. And then on top of that, McLaren's strategy blunders, especially the one in Silverstone, where he could have potentially won that race. He maybe would have made a better decision in the pit stop over what tyre to take at the end of the race if they had just double stacked him when he was the quicker driver on track. And then on top of that, Miami won by Lando, but for a quirk of the safety car and the fact that Oscar didn't have the upgrade that race. He only got it the race afterwards, and look what he did with it. You can understand a little bit why they're happy to just annoy Lando, because they kind of don't see him as their future. Or at least certain parts of the team don't think that, and that must grate at Lando. Maybe it's a vicious cycle of a lack of confidence being compounded by more lack of confidence. The team don't want to back you, so you doubt yourself. You perform well in qualifying, then you criticize yourself for that amazing qualifying performance, and it then pans out in the race where you make big mistakes, or you're not aggressive enough, or you're too aggressive, and you can never quite make the balance. And it goes round and round and round and round. And the better that you're teammate is doing, the more level-headed he is. And Oscar's formidable from that point of view. He's very, very level-headed. He doesn't seem to let anything get at him. The more your teammate does that, the more that cycle of confidence goes down, the more the team don't have confidence that you're their guy. Ultimately, where does that leave us, right? Like where does that leave Lando when it comes to the to what happens at the end of the title race? If we're in Abu Dhabi and Lando is coming round the final corner and he's lost it to Max by a point or two, am I can anyone really hand on heart say that he had deserved that title, right? That the better person hadn't won it, that Max hadn't done everything he could because Max was out there grinding those results out even when the car wasn't at its best. Sure, he didn't get the win in Miami when it was potentially there for the taking, but when there's been a sniff of an opportunity, Spain, Miami, he's absolutely taken it with both hands and he's wrung the most out of that car. Can we honestly say that Lando Norris has done the same thing? I'm just not sure that we can. So where would that title actually rank if he wins it? If he does come out on top against Max in the end, where does that title really stand in the grand scheme of things? I'm sure it would mean a lot to Lando, and in the Hall of Fame, he's always going to be there. But is it going to be a Jacques Villeneuve style world championship that you kind of think, yeah, he won it, but it wasn't really the better guy that did. Sorry, Jack. But ultimately, you can understand, therefore, why there's a little bit of reluctance from McLaren, even if it's not the right thing to have done to not back him. And pragmatically, as I say, it's time. It's time. It was probably time 2 or 3 races ago. Um, but Lando just didn't give them the no choice that I think he needed to. As usual, let me know what you think. Leave us a comment. Leave us a like. Please subscribe. And we'll see you guys in the next one.